This illustration deals with transfer equipment rated as service equipment. Such equipment is defined in Article 100 of the NEC, but a great amount of information can be obtained by reviewing UL 1008. But to start off, let's start with the generator. The rules are found in Article 445. But let's review classifying the generator, which is at the left of the generator in the illustration. Notice an emergency generator in accordance with 700.2 informational note supplies certain loads for the generator to be classified as an emergency generator. 701.2 informational note lists the loads a generator supplies to be classified a legally required standby generator. 702.2 informational note lists the loads that an optional standby generator would supply. And notice there's a big advantage in the classification of your generator. For example, if the generator is classified an emergency generator, that means it's brought on within 10 seconds, full power, and also it has a 15-minute delay characteristic. If it's a 701.2 generator, then it could be brought on within 60 seconds and have a 15-minute delay characteristic to it. But notice if it's an emergency generator, 700.2, you can't mix the wiring with the general wiring of the facility. If it happened to be, though, classified a 701 generator, you could mix the wiring with the normal power, and you could do the very same if it was classified a 702 generator, which is a optional standby generator. But notice if it's an optional standby generator, you can bring it on manually, bring it on automatically, design it to supply the loads that the user wishes to supply. So there's some advantages based upon the classification of your generator. Now notice 445.13 basically states if you size the conductors from a generator at 115% of the output of the generator, then the disconnecting means could be remotely from the generator located. But if you did not size the conductors at 115% of the output, then you would install a main at the generator if you want to take, say, a couple or 2 or 3 feeders maybe off of the generator and supply loads with it. Now notice the transfer switch is identified and classified as a 3-pole or 4-pole generator in accordance with 250.30 informational note 1 or 2. Now basically it's a 3-pole generator if you do not switch the grounded neutral. In other words, the neutral would be grounded at the service and, so to speak, back to the utilities in some cases. But if you do not switch the grounded conductor or neutral conductor, the generator is not required to be grounded. But if it happens to be a 4-pole switch in compliance with 250.30, informational 1 or 2, notice that you would have to ground the generator then, because you would be working with the generator grounded in compliance with what it's supplied in some cases. Now the normal power overhead or underground for this type of service, you'd find it in 230.23a or 230.31a. The service equipment now, the disconnects and how they would be arranged, 1 main, 2 to 6 mains, is in 230.70 A through C, 230.71 and 230.72. Now, the NEC loop that is suggested to be reviewed here for that transfer switch is in the NEC loop, boxed in information, 700.5, if it's an emergency transfer switch. Is it service equipment? Is it permitted to be service equipment, or it's not? 701.5 for legally required, 702.5 for legally, optional standby type generator. And if you happen to be into healthcare facilities, 517.31A and B and 517.42A and B, which is reviewed, I believe, in volume 2 of the Stallcup's electrical design book. But this illustration basically illustrates how to classify a generator, and the transfer equipment, is it rated as service equipment, or it's not rated as service equipment? Is it a 3-pole transfer switch? Is it a 4-pole transfer switch? Now, UL 1008 goes into more depth about the transfer switch. Is it used as a service equipment, and how would it have to be rated and so forth? Also, the UL 1008 would deal with the transfer switch should it not be rated as service equipment. You could also go on the UL website, just type in ul.org and call up the UL White Book for General Industrial, and you could also read about these transfer switches in that electronic version of the OUL White Book. Now, with this in mind, this is what figure 6-40 is illustrating, exactly what type of transfer switch do we have. 3-pole, 4-pole, is it service equipment rated or is it not? And then the classification of the generator, and then the NEC loop that suggested sections that we should review. That's what this figure 6-40 is illustrating.